All right, so let's talk now the issues of aviation. South Africa's aviation sector stands at a critical juncture, especially in 2025, with a strategic location on the continent, world-class airports, and a history of regional aviation leadership. The country has long held the potential to become a dominant hub in African air travel. Today, revitalized government efforts, private investment, and global collaboration are reshaping the future of this sector. Let's then engage Professor Angelo Dube, who is a legal scholar, qualified fixed-wing pilot, and aviation law expert, and founded the Flying Jurist. Professor Dube, thank you very much for joining us. Good evening.
Thank you so much, my brother, for having me, and good evening to you and your listeners.
Qualified fixed-wing pilot. What is that? Sounds exciting.
Basically, yes, it means when other people are flying helicopters, I'm flying the aeroplane as you know it, the one with wings on the side.
Oh.
Yes.
How long have you been a pilot for?
Oh, my brother, my first flight was on Valentine's Day in 2010.
Sure.
And I never looked back from that time. Yes.
So that will be tons and tons of hours that you have flown then across all destinations globally.
We have been trying. You know, for the African child, it's not that easy. The years may be many. The hours may not necessarily correlate with the years because you raise enough money to fly for a while, then you are out of finance for a while, and you're out of the cockpit for a while, and you fly again. But yes, we have been flying across Africa over the years, and we've been to many destinations, and we've been taking the love of aviation to many destinations across the African continent.
Yeah, so that's a barrier to entry, really, the cost of flying. And how do we... I want to talk us about the state of aviation in South Africa and perhaps Africa as well. But just on that issue, how do we encourage the children of the soil to enjoy and to enter this space when one of the barriers is caused, and what is being done to deal with that, to address that issue?
Okay. Look, from a government perspective, government is trying to ensure that there are bursaries available from the Training Authority for the Transport Sector, which is called TITA, and from the South African Civil Aviation Authority, which is the regulator for the aviation sector. They often advertise calls for applications for funding for people to go into the aviation sector every year around July, August. That's the time to look out for these scholarships or bursaries that are often given out by government. But we also encourage, African children to go to their nearest airport to talk to, aviation advocates that they see out there who are perhaps running Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube channels. Those who are trying to bring aviation to the people, they need to connect with those people because they will introduce them to other ways of entering the industry. Because I know that many of our young people do not have information on how to enter the aviation sector. But we do have many organizations such as the Flying Jurist, which had an aviation indaba today in Sandton, where we try to bring industry stakeholders together, governments, government departments, regulators, industry captains, and to say, how do you move South Africa forward? How do you move Africa forward and introduce the African child into the industry? You will note that in our event that was there today, we had learners from the Vaal area in Sebokeng that came through. These are grade 10s and grade 11s to come and be where the captains are, to be where the logistics people are, the tourism people are, the air traffic controllers are, so they can learn and their love for aviation can be sparked at an earlier age.
Oh, that's beautiful. How many children did you have there?
Because of budgetary constraints, we say to the school they cannot bring more than 10 because we needed to transport them this side. But we hope that with more industry players coming in and supporting the initiative, we can actually get more children to come through and be exposed.
Is it an annual event?
The Aviation Indaba is an annual event. It happens around about July, August every year. Last year we had it at Vanderboom Airport because we wanted to ensure that those who come through can actually see an aircraft and touch it for the first time. But this year we thought, let's do it at the Maslow Hotel in Sandton, Johannesburg, because of its centrality. We're also beginning to talk to other stakeholders in the industry now, both in and out of province, to say, what can we do together for 2026? We will be sharing information once we have coordinated with our stakeholders and our sponsors to know where we're having it next year, but it's definitely coming back in 2026. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be more explosive. We just don't know the venue yet.
Yeah, no. This is a very important gathering, particularly for young black children who may not necessarily have information about aviation, about flying, and I'm thinking perhaps in provinces like Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, in Mpumalanga, Kruger, Mpumalanga International Airport. Those are kind of players who really need to come on board and support your effort, because this is practical career guidance, isn't it?
It definitely is. We combine career guidance with policy development. In other words, we want the youngsters to come and be guided. But as we guide them, we want the leaders in the aviation, your captains in the airlines, your cabin crew, your air traffic control, your drone pilots, your people in the tourism sector, people in the cargo sector, people in the logistics sector, to come and say to the youngsters, being in the aviation sector does not only mean being in the cockpit as a pilot. It could mean that you are operating a drone on a farm, spraying chemicals or fertilizers onto the crops of a farmer. That is still aviation. It could be that you are moving goods from Durban to Polokwane by air. That's a logistical thing, but it's still aviation. So we want to broaden their mindsets and say it's not just pilots. There are more players within the sector.
Yeah, it's like being in the army. It's not necessarily about rifles and firearms and drills and all those kind of things. You can be a pharmacist, a media practitioner, and all those kind of people in the army itself. So, yeah, it's important then to deal with that kind of thinking. But, Prof, let's look broadly about on the issue of the state of aviation in South Africa, in your view.
Yes. Look, if I'm going to start from the global level and say the projections that we are getting from ICAO, the Civil Aviation Organization, International Regulates Aviation, and from IATA, the Airline Transportation Organization, the need for pilots, for cabin crew, for mechanical, for aircraft mechanics is high. The projections for 2030 are even higher. We're going to be needing close to 1 million aviation personnel to come into the industry. So we are, as the blessing and the curse that we have as South Africa is that our standards are high, our quality is good. We train pilots, we train cabin crew, we train aircraft mechanics, and we then lose them to the north. We lose them to the Middle East, we lose them to Europe, we lose them to Australia. All these other countries take our people because our training standards are good. If you get a South African trained pilot, a South African trained air traffic control, you are guaranteed your airspace is safe. Your people are safe. So we're losing them. So what does that mean? We are coming from an era where for black people, it was impossible to enter the industry because remember the job color bar system. If you study the politics of labor in South Africa, you will notice that at some point it would have been illegal for you to dream of entering a space such as engineering or mining engineering or working in the railways or working in the airlines as a black person. That was legal in terms of the apartheid regime's laws. We then moved on in 1994 into the new South Africa, and we had this skills shortage where amongst the African people, the black people, there were not enough pilots, there were not enough females, there were not enough disabled people. We're still dealing with those issues. That in the entire number of people who hold licenses, whether as pilots or as cabin crew or as any other, licensed personnel within aviation, the demographics are not agreeing. That's the problem that we have in South Africa. And we need to transform the industry. And for us to transform it, we need to be frank about what we need to do as a country and where we need to take it. And that's why voices like ours unnecessary in the industry. Say, where are we taking the industry? And how do we deal with those who are now freaked out by the transformation that is happening and ensure them that all is well? The standards are still fine. The quality is still fine. These are professionals trained by other professionals, and they are world-class pilots. They are world-class air traffic control. They are world-class cabin crew. That's where we're at right now.
It has a huge impact on the economy then, the issue of skills shortage, but importantly, workforce retention. I mean, we need to retain these professionals, the pilots, the air traffic controllers, as you say, the engineers. And it's a problem if we are losing them. If there's a brain drain, they go to other countries and they benefit those countries out of our investment in them. There must then be a strategy to retain them. If it's not there already, what is being done to develop such a strategy so that we retain these professionals?
Yes. It's part of the dialogue that we're having, that we had today at the Aviation Indaba, that we're going to continue to have because we can't solve it overnight. The reasons for people leaving South Africa are many. What we cannot deny is that our tax system hit heavy on the pocket of those who earn a little bit higher than the ordinary person. While those abroad will offer our people better taxation rates, when they look at what they're taxed at home and what they're taxed abroad, they would rather go abroad. Because number one, abroad they're paid more to begin with, and they're taxed less than they're taxed at home. So we need a multi-sectoral dialogue, a multi-sectoral collaboration to get to the bottom of why are we losing our people. It can't just be the transport sector or the aviation sector trying to solve this problem. We need the finance sector. We need the taxation sector. We need all the other sectors that deal with just the human being as a whole to figure out what's pushing our people away from South Africa. What are we not giving that Qatar is giving, that Emirates is giving? Because you're flying out there in the Middle East and you hear this person on the tower. You're like, no matter what, that accent is South African.
Yes.
I know I'm not home, but I'm hearing a home voice. You know.
Oh, don't you just love it when you hear it in the Middle East somewhere, or in the UK even?
It becomes lovely, but then when you go beyond that, you realize, hey, we've lost quality. Yeah.
No, true.
Yeah.
One of the issues. Maybe let me start with this one. Have we recovered? The South African aviation, at least, recovered from the COVID-19, because that was a defining moment for the aviation sector. Yes.
No, the clear answer to that is no, we've not recovered. Remember, before COVID-19, the shortage of pilots globally was estimated as around 200 to 300,000. But post-COVID-19, the number is approaching 1 million. It's so high. Why is that? Because some of the people that were affected by COVID could not go back to the cockpit and fly. For instance, if I was to use pilots as an example, some of them retired. Some of them decided this is not for me. I have another degree. I have another qualification. I'm leaving flying. I'm going to go and do accounting or something because I'm qualified in that. So we had a lot of loss of skills from people leaving the industry, from people resigning, from people retiring, and from people not being fit enough in terms of their medicals and health status to continue to be pilots. So there was a slump in the growth of the sector, and it continues to be behind even today. We have not recovered.
It has impacted us greatly here in South Africa because, I don't know whose fault is this, we have allowed the industry really to be where it is. We have limited players, the number of players that we have. For instance, if you look at a state-owned Mango Airlines, it was allowed to be where it is today. We don't have that service. In fact, I don't know what were the issues with British Airways and Kulula. Those two had to fold and close shop. There are many other airlines that have collapsed here in South, Nationwide and One Time and all of them. So, but we have, over the years, especially from the COVID time right up to now, allowed a foreign player, a foreign entity, or a foreign-owned entity, or at least a huge percentage of it owned by foreign actors, to dominate our space. I have a serious problem with that. It pains me really when I'm flying, when I don't see a lot of South African Airways in the air. And when you see it, the cost is just too much for me to be able to fly to Durban or Cape Town. So that needs to be addressed.
You are right. You fly to Addis Ababa right now. As soon as you land, it's going to be Ethiopian Airways all the way. And then you're going to see maybe some fly to Dubai somewhere there or some other odd aircraft here and there. But primarily 99% is going to be Ethiopian Airlines. You go to Dubai, you go to the main terminal, you're going to see Emirates for 99%, and then an odd aircraft out there. You go to other terminal, the regional terminal, you're going to see Fly Dubai. So it's all domestic, it's all national flyers that are there. How did we lose it? It's not just Mango where we lost it. Remember, we used to have SA Express, which was a feeder to our pipeline, a feeder to our cadet system. We were creating, South Africans were qualified through a cadet system using SA Express. We brought those young girls and young boys with low hours, put them through the system, and we made them fly ATRs, and they gained hours from that. Then they were ready for the bigger missions. Through our own national airline, we allowed it to die, which means there's a problem in our system in as far as we are designing how we are catalyzing this economy. And we need to have an introspection with ourselves as a country to say, what are we doing to our aviation industry? We cannot be strategically positioned as we are, because South Africa is strategically positioned, but we are slipping on that particular advantage that we have. Instead, we're allowing private players to run the show, and we're happy with that. And there's got to be a problem there. It's a policy problem. It's an economic planning problem. We need to dialogue about it, and we need to give policy advice to the government on where or how to move this forward to ensure that the industry benefits the South African on the ground, because our boys and girls were flying under the cadet system of SA Express, but they're not anymore.
It pains me. I mean, we have been overtaken by the likes of Rwanda Air, for instance. I remember when they were receiving their second cohort of aircrafts. I was there in that country many years ago, and I remember I interviewed the CEO there. Very beautiful. I mean, if you go to Kenya, Kenya Airways is also, making strides in the province. Ethiopian Air is quite big on the continent. So we are being left behind, and it pains us, because then, aviation plays a critical role in the growth of the economy. Prof, I was looking at the Air Traffic and Navigation Services, ATNS, for instance. There was a time when Mr. Dlamini was there, went and saw him the other time. But now to say that, the reliability of the communication, navigation, and surveillance systems, the CNS, is just in a dire state, such that the minister had to set up a ministerial intervention team to stabilize and rebuild ATNS, is a problem.
Look, I know the fellows at ATNS. I work closely with them. My fellow, aviator and fellow lawyer, Zola Majavu, who is the chairperson of ATNS, we work closely together. I know he's doing great work in that space. Here are two critical things for me. How old is our infrastructure in our airports around South Africa? Are we still up to date? And if not, who is holding the path that should allow us to upgrade our systems? And then the second question is, in the fiscus of South Africa, you know that aviation is broad, and we have a history. Yeah? And this history is like this. The disbursements of monies to various entities that ensure that our airspace is safe, that our aviation industry is rolling out nicely. What were the trends in the past in terms of allocations, of budgetary allocations to various regulators within the aviation industry? Did we not, as a country, perhaps give ATNS less in favor of other entities within government that also overlook the aviation space. For me, those are critical dialogues we need to have and be frank about it and begin to correct our problems and our mistakes. So we've made mistakes in the past. You are correct. We cannot have aircraft approaching a particular airport and not being able to land because the weather is bad. And when the weather is bad, we know there ought to be instrument landing systems. There ought to be precision guidance systems that allow our aircraft to land no matter what no matter what weather conditions they're operating under. But if that cannot happen, then the aircraft is flying blind and it has to turn back in the interest of safety. We need to ask the critical questions. Why is the money not getting down to the ground? Why are we not upgrading to better systems? Why are we not adopting other systems that other operators elsewhere in the globe are adopting, which are much more advanced than what we have right now?
Yeah. I was fascinated, Prof, when I was looking at AXA expanding on the continent. I think it's either they were constructing or they were overseeing the construction of one of the airports on the continent. I can't remember the country, but I was just saying that this is what we should be doing. We should be leading as the country because we have all this infrastructure, the knowledge, the professionals who are working in the field, and so on and so on. But, we seem to be taking a couple of steps forward and at some point we just pause or go backwards. I mean, I don't know what is going on. Perhaps we need to do. But there are external factors. Jet fuel prices, they are not being controlled by us. Airport taxes, operational costs. Those are some of the issues that are stifling the growth of the aviation industry.
You are correct, quite correct. We are pushed to adopt what are called sustainable aviation fuels, which is an ICAO mandate. Even the African Union wants us to go in that direction. But when you get some value addition to fuel as you know it, and you now produce what you call a sustainable aviation fuel, you are basically saying, I've spent money to give you better fuel, therefore I'm going to charge you higher. Are our airlines ready to buy higher fuel? To buy fuel at a higher cost simply because it's now sustainable? All those are questions we must be asking ourselves. Botswana and Namibia are currently in agreement to develop a jointly funded refinery between the two countries where they refine fuel. Why are we not seeing that at the African level? Let me forget the African level. At the SADC level, what is SADC good for if we can't see a wider network of refineries in SADC to make it cheaper for us to procure fuels that is sourced locally and refined locally? When are we going to stop this self-defeating attitude of taking the raw material here in Africa, sending it abroad to be refined, and then buying it at a higher cost? Africa must talk to Africa. Africa must have a conversation with Africa, and Africa must say we must stop self-harming ourselves, because we have been self-harming ourselves. The reason these aviation fuels are so expensive is because we dig them up here, we send them abroad, they get refined, and we buy them at a higher cost. As to why we're doing that, I don't know. But Africa needs to ask itself that question. Do we still need to do that beyond the days of colonialism? Why are we still sending it to the north and then buying it at a higher price?
Yeah, that's why intra-African trade is so low in on the continent because of I think lack of decisiveness and leadership. I mean, we've not even touched on the issue of a single African air transport market. That has been discussed for very many years. So we are still operating on outdated regulatory frameworks. So those are some of the things that need to be corrected. Look, Prof, I'm fascinated by your initiative, the Flying Jurist Indaba. So please do update us on processes and how we can come in and assist. It is just a fascinating thing. I mean, it's lovely to be flown by, a pilot is a young woman who is probably 26, 25. Some are even younger than that. I don't know. But, just to hear that voice, and when they open the cockpit and sometimes they allow you to speak to them, and you look at them and say, such a young woman who's pushing this machine. 4 engines. My
Yep.
goodness. Oh, man. Flying is something else. So,
No, indeed. We look, the Aviation Indaba itself is an annual event.
yeah.
So we hope that you guys will keep it on your radar and be able to follow it. It's growing. It's moving towards becoming a continental gathering where we want the whole continent to be there. So we have issues from Kenya, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Togo, Benin, Mauritius, Togo, and so forth and so forth. And that's the only way we can move it forward. If we work together with the media fraternity and the professional fraternity in the aviation sector, and we bring these issues for discussion, so that the public can consume professional opinions that are drawn from experience and expertise.
I'm fascinated. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you, my brother. Thanks for having me.
Good night to you. Professor Angelo Dube is a legal scholar, qualified fixed-wing pilot, an aviation law expert, and the founder of the Flying Jurist. You heard they had Indaba here in Johannesburg in Sentin.